All right, back on LinkedIn with my brother from the Coast Guard, Dan Chase. For those who don't know, Dan and I were special agents in the Coast Guard. Dan was way more educated than I and was selected to be an elite computer crimes investigator. But we've worked on a bunch of stuff in the Gov. We've worked on a bunch of stuff in the private sector now. And your story is unique in that you were a military criminal investigator and then you transitioned to the private sector after retirement. So let's just jump into it. Tell me what helped you in that transition, what hurt you in that transition, what did you learn through that whole process?
Absolutely. And first off, thanks for having me on, brother. These videos are awesome.
Thanks,
They're
man.
super helpful to anybody looking to transition, and yeah, big fan. So
Thanks,
thanks for
brother.
letting me be part of the family.
It,
Um,
it's too easy, man.
Transitions are tough for anybody, even in the military. You go from one duty station to the next, your responsibilities change. You know, uh, Not even such big things like that. What grocery store you go to changes. So there's all these like little things that you don't necessarily plan for when you transition. And so now you're making a major life transition, like leaving your essentially what's been your organizational family, which is the military behind, and moving on to something new. And it doesn't mean that you're moving on to something better. That's one thing some people kind of make the mistake of in their mindset. When you get ready to transition, you think, I'm out of here. So if you approach everything fresh and new and like it's a learning experience, then you can't go wrong there. For me, right away, some things that helped me immediately was reaching out to my local veteran services. It's cliche to say that kind of stuff, but it's true. Uh, Check with your disabled American vets. Check with your local VA office. Check with the American Legion. Check with the VFW. Check with your cities, counties, states, Veterans Commission. I'm on the City of Martinez's Veterans Commission, and I know any veteran who reaches out to me, I can point him in the right direction for some education and some other things. So definitely a helpful route, as well as researching what you want to do next before you get out. That is
Before you get out, before
before
you
you get
leave, do
out,
the
and I'm
research.
talking a year before you get out if you can. It's never too late to start looking, but if you're gonna wait until you're on that terminal leave, you may see some roadblocks that you weren't expecting. That's not to say that you can't overcome them, but you want to smooth that road out as easy as or as smooth as possible, so you can just charge forward with it.
Did you engage like LinkedIn or the Coast Guard network more broadly at all before you
LinkedIn
made
for
the transition?
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I looked at LinkedIn. Some people there. I spoke to people I knew as well. My brother. I've got a good friend. Neither of them are in the military or were in the military. I just asked how they got where they're at. It wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do. They were doing some corporate jobs, but I did want to know what are they looking for in candidates for other positions. What are some career paths that they see me in, and what are some things that I could do to make sure I'm an attractive candidate outside of the military? And I think we've talked before that there's a little bit of hubris there when you're coming from the military and they tell you don't let your skills go to waste and they sort of pump you up, but you're starting at the bottom like everybody else when you get out of the military. So, you know, obviously don't take your skills for granted, but it's not a free pass to a job or a new career by any means whatsoever. You still got to work at it.
And your skills were interesting that you were, not a lot of people know that the Coast Guard or all the other branches of the military have their own computer forensics investigators.
Right.
Did you find that there was difficulty translating that into the private sector at all? Whereas, you don't only work on civil matters. I'm sure you work on some criminal matters in the private sector, but did what you had some specific like hard skills that
Yeah.
and certifications and stuff that you had to achieve while you're in the military. Did that translate, or did the soft skills translate too?
Uh, Absolutely. There are some soft skills that translate, of course, are project management. I mean, that's a big one that people want to see. And that's something that you can really not only plus up in your resume, but speak openly about when you're doing an interview. Uh, Being able to facilitate a project from start to finish is one of the most valuable things, especially keeping it on budget and on time, that private sector looks for. And then they actually, they're hunting for people who have project manager skills. So that's a soft skill, or at least something I was able to demonstrate throughout my career that I've been able to do. As far as the hard skills go, absolutely. You nailed it on the head. I was in a very specific, tiny sliver of a skill set when it comes to imaging phones or computers or taking notes and in a way when we're talking about digital investigations that
Oh, yeah.
I get offers all the time for work. Even I'm in private sector and I get LinkedIn messages constantly about, hey, we got a new opportunity, we got a new opportunity. So
Because you
it's
have NCASE or because you have certain certifications.
because I
So
have those certifications, or at the very least, a lot of those in this world, it's one of those where your tests or your qualification certificates may expire, but the experience never does. And that's something to remember going forward with everything. So I know a lot of people in this field, they take, say, the NCASE cert,
yeah.
uh, but they took it 5 years ago, and it may not be valid, but they also now have 5 years of experience doing investigations with NCASE. So, having that skill set, or at least being able to translate that into something very marketable or something very desirable, it has been a big boon.
Interesting. When you started looking, were you looking to transition to someplace to use those skills, or did it just kind of come up that hey, I did a recruiter reach out to you because of that, or how did that actual transition to? Because I know you did some time in federal law enforcement, but
Yeah,
did your current employer look for you and be like, hey, you've got the hard skills, the certifications that we're looking for, or how'd that
I've
work?
got a great transition path. I actually went on USA Jobs and looked for a Pathways internship. And
Oh, okay.
Pathways internships are amazing. Basically, you get, you're just out of the military or you're in school. They look to pick you up while you're in school or just graduated, sort of give you some on-the-job training for things, and then try to get you set up for a full-time position within the government.
Hmm.
So I interned at the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Inspector General, as an investigative analyst. So I sort of played to my strengths. Being an investigator was already my current or my previous position, so it was no problem to bring me on as an intern as an investigator. And I used that to sort of move over back into the digital forensics
Hmm.
part that they had, and then get hired on full time there. My master's degree is in healthcare administration, which has
Smart.
nothing to do with digital forensics.
No, but well, you got to understand compliance and
Absolutely. There are
all
some good
the
things there, like
regulations.
privacy, HIPAA concerns. Again, you're looking back at project management, though. I can
Mm.
see this project from start to finish. I could see my graduate degree from start to finish, and I have that to show. Like, look, I can. My time is valuable, and your time is valuable. So that was a talking point at least.
And then when you went to your current employer, how did they find you, or did you find them?
I was recruited on LinkedIn. They
Okay.
uh, they sent me an email saying, again, one of those, we've got a great opportunity. And at the time, where I was at, like most digital forensics slivers within the law enforcement or federal government side, you are understaffed, under budget, and there's
Yep.
not a lot of growth because the 15 or 20 guys they picked to be in that's all they have the budget for and the time for, and those guys are not going anywhere.
Well,
So
and especially on the computer forensics side, you've got, at least thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars in training
absolutely.
um, under your belt, and then the equipment on top of that, you're $250,000 in the hole or in value to the government.
Annual licenses.
Yeah,
Those,
yeah,
those
yeah,
fees.
yeah, millions, yeah,
And
yeah.
then for the federal government, they make sure that your certificates don't expire. In fact, you have to keep them up in certain, I know, DoD positions if you need to get that cybersecurity certs or the security specialist certification. So you have to keep your education up, and they pay for that too.
Oh,
So
interesting.
with all that continual uh, um, investment in you, the jobs in the federal government for digital forensics tend to be far and few between.
Yeah.
They're great gigs to have, but that does mean that you can stagnate a little bit when it comes to new experiences or promotions, or honestly just new ways of training. Uh, and where I'm at now, we use different software that maybe that we wouldn't have used at my previous position within the federal government. That's not to say it's wrong, but you know how the bureaucracy can kind of get you. You've got a set of approved tools that you can use, and those approved tools are the standard, and that's what we should stick with until we come up with a whole new policy saying why we're not using those tools anymore.
Of course. And it has to go. Somebody has to get an OPR billet or
Right,
bullet,
right.
to.
So talking about transition, then it's very difficult coming from the federal government where you're like, listen, the manual says we have, this or this, and that's it. And then you come to the private sector where you're very seat of the pants sometimes and just trying something out to see if it works.
Did they look to you to develop kind of standards and policies, procedures, and
Yes.
because you know how all this stuff goes, and you need a process at least, right?
I was hired in February of 2020, and my first week on the job, everything shut down for COVID. And my second week of the job, I was writing a company-wide COVID-19 policy because I know how to write policy.
I thought because you had the healthcare management
That's
masters.
it. That's it. But yeah, I've been here and I've written 3 or 4 policies in the year. Some of them have to do with digital forensics, and some of them just have to do with. So it's you come from a background where policy is strong, then they're going to rely on you for that strength.
What do you say to people, or what kind of advice would you give somebody who's like, I know my lane, but and I'm going to go into the private sector, I'm going to own that lane, but you're a good example of somebody because you had expertise and you know how to write. You were a little bit outside your comfort zone, maybe. Do you encourage people to take on those opportunities in the private sector, or what do you think about that?
Absolutely, and I would say to somebody who says they know their lane that maybe they don't.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I knew my lane
Guilty.
for sure. Yeah. I'm a 20-year college student, which means I knew my lane many times, over and over again. So, that's one of my failures has been not completing that college degree, that piece of paper earlier, not getting advanced education earlier when it was a lot easier through tuition assistance and things like that to get it done. You also sort of miss certain promotion opportunities within the military because you're lacking some of those educational certificates. I mean, certainly anybody who wants to go to OCS or continue on in that kind of career field should probably look at making sure they have their education tucked away because that's a requirement. And I'll also say when you're transitioning out to the private sector without a degree, you can't even go on USA Jobs now and get anything above a GS6 without having a bachelor's degree.
Mm. And do you think that the private industry or companies are looking for people with bachelor's degrees at least? I believe that's the barrier for entry. Most are looking for something like that. Yeah.
Not only that, they're looking for years of experience for a lot of things. And now I don't want to dissuade anybody from saying, "Oh, I can't do anything now because I don't have years of experience." That being said, you can look for other opportunities that will, one, get you the experience, such as that Pathways program. Mm. And so to kind of go back on what hurt me was not having my schooling done earlier, my education done earlier. What I had to do to try to fix that was take advantage of the GI Bill in conjunction with taking a low-paying 20-hour-a-week GS4 intern.
Ooh, that was a GS4.
To get the housing allowance, the school paid for, and the time, as well as now I'm getting the experience and the federal time in as a Pathways intern. So it didn't work out for me while I was in, so I took advantage while I was out. Mm. Now that meant I started at the bottom as a GS4. I started at the bottom as an incoming student, but I put that pride aside.
Well, it sounds like you realigned your priorities. Was that because you as you're doing your research and you're looking at where you want to go and what you want to do in the private sector, did you see, or even in government, did you see like, oh, I actually need this bachelor's degree or these advanced degrees if I want to be successful in the private sector? Was that the math that you did after transition?
It was some of that, and it was also some of, like many people, I went to vocational rehab. I took advantage of my VA benefits. And when you go through the job hunting phase with them, they will they will show you or make you do the research as well. Say, find me 10 jobs you want to do, and what are the requirements for those jobs?
Oh,
So
interesting.
now you don't need Voc Rehab to do that. You can find 10 jobs
You
you
can
want
do
to
that
do
yourself.
on your own. You don't need somebody, telling you on the other side of a desk. So you look those up, and USA Jobs, again, try to find anything above GS6 that doesn't require a college degree. You're not going to find it.
Wow.
So that was a driving factor there, at least, was looking for employment in general, knowing that I needed to have a degree. I've got all this experience, and my experience was great, but as you know, in federal law enforcement, I left the military, which has allowed me to be an investigator. If you try to get an 1811 position as an investigator in federal law enforcement and you don't have a degree, they're not even going to look at you.
Yeah.
The computer
Yeah.
bumps you out. You don't even get past the artificial intelligence screening.
No, yeah, but I think that's the same thing, or I know that's the same thing in the private sector. If you're not meeting those kind of key core requirements, I was talking with somebody recently who was going to talk to a recruiter and wanted to know, hey, what's the recruiter going to ask me? And I said, and that was one of the things you got to check the box. Do
Yeah.
you have the degree that you say you have, or do you have this education level that is required for the job? Yeah, same with you, 20-year college student myself, but I have a love-hate relationship with, brick and mortar education. Um, but I realize that it's the barrier to entry. You've got to have it if you want to be successful working in the private sector. And in your line of work, though, you had to not only have the education, kind of standard education that was required, but you had to have all these certifications and things like that. So, we'll pause here. But what I want to tell people watching at home is make sure you connect with Dan. He's a great resource. He and his company, like I said, we've done plenty of computer forensics or digital forensics together on the outside and in the private sector. But definitely share these videos with your partners. Like them, comment on them, ask us questions. We'll answer them. Let us know if we're missing something or what kind of challenges you're having. We want to help you be successful in your transition to the private sector. So stay tuned. We'll be back with Dan here in just a second.